Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The afternoon sun set low over Los Angeles, spreading long shadows over the city's bustling streets as Deacon Sharp washed down the last table at Il Giardino. The Italian restaurant had been his pride and pleasure, a location where he could finally establish some stability after years of chaos, scheming, and misery. The perfume of fresh basil, garlic, and simmering marinara sauce remained in the air long after the dinner rush had subsided into the peaceful buzz of closing time. Deacon looked at his watch. Nearly 8 o'clock. Taylor Hayes had planned to meet him here shortly for a late-night meal, just the two of them, away from the prying eyes of their tangled families. Deacon's marriage to Sheila Carter had ended months earlier, shattered by deception, old traumas, and an irresistible attraction to Taylor. Sheila battled hard to maintain him, her obsession becoming darker with each rejection. She had even tried to force his hand, demanding that he sign over Il Giardino in exchange for Taylor's safety. However, Deacon believed he had stood firm. Little did he realize that Sheila's rage was far from over. As Deacon secured the front door and turned off the lights, he caught a whiff of smoke in his nose. At first, he dismissed it as residue from the kitchen's wood-fired oven. But then the alarm rang, a high-pitched shriek that broke the silence. Flames erupted at the back, near the storage room that housed old linens and extra cooking oil. The fire spread at scary speed, licking up the drapes and devouring the wooden beams that gave the restaurant its rustic appeal. Smoke billowed thick and black, clogging the air. "Deacon!" A voice cried from outside, but he could hardly hear it over the roar of the raging fire. Deacon, trapped in the main eating room, coughed furiously, his eyes hurting as he searched for an exit. The front door was jammed in some way, possibly due to fire damage to the structure or falling debris. Panic set in as flames engulfed the kitchen entryway. He grabbed a chair and smashed into a window, but the glass was reinforced from a previous restoration. Heat pressed against him like a live creature, burning his clothing and filling his lungs with noxious smoke. Memories raced back. His son RJ, his convoluted past with the Forestos, and the redemption he'd fought for at this same restaurant. Was this how things ended? In the spot where he had invested his heart and soul? Outside, Sheila Carter stood motionless on the pavement, her heart hammering. She had come to Il Giardino that night with a plan in mind, possibly one last confrontation, or perhaps observing from a distance as Deacon understood what he had lost. However, the sight of orange flames flashing through the windows altered everything in an instant. Her breath caught. Deacon was inside. The guy she had loved with a ferocity that bordered on madness, the father of her child Finn, the one who had seen her at her worst and still tried to guide her toward something better. "No," she said quietly, her prosthetic toe, a constant reminder of her own troubled background, feeling heavy as she went closer. "Not like this." Bystanders gathered with phones out, calling for assistance. Sirens sounded in the distance, but they seemed too far away. The fire department was on its way, but time was of the essence. Sheila's thoughts raced. She understood the layout of Il Giardino better than anyone. She'd assisted Deacon in the early days, when their relationship was brimming with passion and potential. The storage room was accessible via a partially disguised side entrance near the alley. But what if the fire had begun there? Sheila kicked off her heels and dashed for the building, not thinking twice. "Deacon!" she exclaimed, her voice breaking through the commotion. People tried to stop her. A stranger grabbed her arm and yelled warnings, but she resisted with the tenacity of a woman who had survived bullets, falls, and innumerable betrayals. "Get out of my way. He's in there." Thankfully, the side door was unlocked, but as she shoved it open, a wall of heat hit her like a physical blow. The smoke rushed out, dense and choking. Sheila drew her jacket over her mouth and nose, her eyes watering instantly. "Deacon, where are you?" she asked, her voice already raspy. Inside, the restaurant was a nightmare of flickering shadows and roaring fires. Tables were overturned, and glassware smashed all over the floor. The lovely fresco of the Italian countryside on the far wall bubbled and peeled from the tremendous heat. Sheila moved through the dining room, her heart pounding. She remembered the nights she'd spent here with Deacon, laughing over pasta and planning their future. Those memories fueled her now, driving her farther into danger. A beam groaned overhead and crashed down in a cloud of flames. Sheila dodged just in time, scratching her arm against a scorching surface. Pain erupted, but she ignored it.
Deacon.
Answer me. A faint cough sounded from the far corner, near the bar where he kept his prized collection of aged wines. Sheila, is that you? She felt both relief and horror. She noticed him slumped against the bar, his face coated with soot, one leg crushed under a collapsed shelf that had crashed during the turmoil. Flames danced dangerously close, gnawing away at the wooden counter. Deacon's eyes widened when he noticed her through the blur. What the hell are you doing? Get out. Not without you, she said, her voice sharp despite the smoke stinging her throat. She flew toward him, literally leaping over a blazing chair, her actions swift and decisive, like the survivor she had always been. Sheila sank to her knees beside him and assessed the damage. The shelf was hefty, filled with shattered bottles that spilled alcohol, fueling the flames. She grasped the edge, muscles straining, and heaved with all her might. Deacon gasped in pain as she moved it just enough to allow him to pull his leg free. His calf was bleeding from a laceration, but he was still moving. Sheila, you crazy woman, why? Because I love you, you idiot, she said, her words coming out raw and uncensored. Tears combined with sweat and soot on her face. Even after everything. Even if you chose her. I couldn't let you die in here. He stared at her, startled, as she helped him up. The flames roared louder now, and the ceiling began to buckle. They had seconds, possibly fewer. Sheila threw his arm across her shoulders to support his weight as they lurched toward the side door. Smoke blinded them, and the heat burned their skin. A part of the roof fell behind them, unleashing a burst of hot air that nearly knocked them over. Hold on, Sheila insisted, her hold firm. They rushed through the side entrance, just as firefighters arrived, hoses pouring water into the blaze. Fresh air greeted them like a miracle, cooling and revitalizing. They slumped on the sidewalk, coughing and wheezing, and paramedics raced over. Deacon lay there, staring up at the starless sky, his hand touching Sheila's. You saved me, he said. After all I've put you through. Sheila turned her head, her piercing, fierce eyes meeting his. We've both done terrible things, Deacon. But tonight was different. I couldn't watch you burn. Not because of me, not because of any of this mess. The crowd gasped. Whispers spread. That's Sheila Carter. She ran straight into the flames. News vans drove up, cameras flashing. Taylor Hayes approached from the distance, her face pale as she pushed through the crowd. She had heard the sirens while driving and rushed there, only to discover the man she loved being cared for by the same lady who had tormented them both. Deacon, Taylor said, kneeling alongside him. Her gaze shifted to Sheila, a mixture of thanks and caution. What happened? Are you okay? Paramedics placed Deacon onto a stretcher while monitoring his leg and oxygen levels. Sheila stood slowly, wincing at the burns on her arms and the rawness in her lungs. She stared at Taylor, then back at Deacon. He's alive. That's what matters. Sheila stayed on the pavement as the ambulance doors closed, seeing Il Giardino, the emblem of Deacon's new life, consumed in flames. Firefighters battled the fire, but it was evident that the restaurant was destroyed. Years of hard work, hopes, and second chances turned to ash. Despite the carnage, something unexpected happened, a glimmer of redemption for Sheila. Days later, at the hospital, Deacon healed under the supervision of his family. Finn came, divided between his mother and his father-in-law's tragedy. Hope Logan brought flowers, her conflicted feelings for Sheila simmering beneath the surface. But as the others went, Sheila sat beside Deacon's bedside, her bandaged hands folded in her lap. You didn't have to do that, Deacon murmured quietly, as the TV in the corner played news stories on the mysterious fire at Il Giardino. Investigators hinted at arson, although there was no proof yet. Sheila's presence that night drew attention, but her courageous efforts quiet most charges. "I know," she said, a faint, weary grin on her lips. "But I did. Maybe it's time we both stopped running from who we are. You've got Taylor now, and I've got to figure out what's next without you." Deacon grabbed for her hand and gently squeezed it. "Thank you, Sheila, for flying into those flames when no one else would." Los Angeles went on, as it usually does. Il Giardino's ruins were fenced off, and investors murmured about intentions to rebuild. Taylor and Deacon became closer in the aftermath, drawn together by the near-tragic event, but Sheila's sacrifice lingered like smoke in the air. She had demonstrated, in a single desperate act, that even the most known criminal on the bold and the beautiful could choose love over vengeance. But shadows lingered. Whispers about how the fire started, a forgotten cigarette, faulty wiring? Or is it more deliberate, coming from a scorned heart? Sheila denied any involvement, focusing her attention to her son Finn and granddaughter Kelly. But in quiet moments, she replayed the night in her head, the heat, the terror, and the raw determination that drove her forward. Weeks became months. Deacon reopened a smaller replica of Il Giardino downtown, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, with Taylor at his side. Sheila initially watched from a distance, but later accepted an offer to the soft opening. The tension was palpable. Old rivalries lingered, but respect had developed. "You look good," Sheila complimented Deacon over a glass of wine, the new eatery alive with activity. "So do you," he said with real affection in his voice. "Hero suits you." She laughed, surprising herself. "Don't get used to it. I'm still Sheila Carter." As the evening progressed, topics centered on family, forgiveness, and second chances. The fire had transformed them all. Deacon stopped taking his life for granted. Taylor discovered that love can grow from the most unlikely places. And Sheila realized that rescuing the man she had lost might have meant saving a bit of herself. In the world of the bold and the beautiful, where passion and betrayal interwoven like vines, this shocking rescue became legendary. Sheila's flight into the flames was more than just an act of valor. It was a watershed moment, when destruction gave rise to unexpected optimism. The restaurant may have burned down, but the relationships formed in the fire endured, reminding everyone that even in the most intense blaze, redemption may come to life. Deacon often recalled that night, how Sheila had charged in without hesitation. "She flew like an angel of chaos," he'd tell friends, yet his eyes softened. Taylor, despite his gratitude, maintained a respectful distance given Sheila's experience. However, the three of them maintained a fragile truce by attending family reunions where Finn mediated with his calm manner. The investigation into the incident dragged on, revealing minor electrical problems compounded by overloaded circuits in the bustling kitchen. There were no arson charges, so everyone could breathe better. Il Giardino's insurance payment enabled Deacon to rebuild stronger, with updated safety features and an expanded menu that paid homage to his Italian roots while hinting at new beginnings. Sheila, for her part, focused her energies on volunteering at a nearby shelter, assisting others in rebuilding after their own calamities. It was her way of making amends, of demonstrating that the woman who had terrified Genoa City and Los Angeles could change. Finn sensed the shift and hugged his mother tighter during visits. "I'm proud of you, Mom," he'd remark, and the words soothed old wounds. On a bright fall evening in Los Angeles, Deacon hosted a private dinner at the new Il Giardino. Sheila attended, sitting across from Taylor. The discourse became lighter, with anecdotes of survival. "Remember that night?" Deacon remarked, raising a glass. "How could we forget?" Sheila said, clinking glasses. "I flew into the flames for you, and I do it again for family." Laughter echoed, but underneath it lurked tremendous truth. In a soap opera world full of twists, this one stood out, a villain turned hero in the blink of an eye, or rather, in the roar of an inferno. The bold and the beautiful continued its tragic narrative, but for Deacon, Sheila, and Taylor, The fire had built something unbreakable, the knowledge that love, no matter how flawed or passionate, could overcome the darkest of times. In their fictitious universe, retellings of the event became family tradition over time. Grandchildren would learn of Grandma Sheila's heroic rescue of Grandpa Deacon from the blazing restaurant, a story of bravery in the face of catastrophe. It humanized the iconic Sheila Carter by revealing dimensions beyond the scams and shootings. She wasn't simply the woman with 9 toes or the one who pretended to be dead. She was the one who put everything on the line when it mattered most. Deacon's recuperation had been quick, thanks to modern treatment and his strong attitude. He pushed himself into the rebuild with increased zeal, taking into account criticism from regulars who had missed the original spot. Taylor was completely supportive of him, and their bond grew stronger as they shared a traumatic experience. Nonetheless, she frequently reflected on Sheila's behavior, wondering if true change was conceivable for someone with such a troubled upbringing. Sheila herself struggled with the fallout. The burns healed, leaving faint scars that she wore as badges. Finn supported therapy sessions, which helped her untangle her intense love for Deacon. "I thought losing him meant losing everything," she told a counselor. "But saving him showed me that I still had power, the good kind." The community responded. Local news lauded Sheila as a hero, with interviews in which she downplayed her role, saying, "Anyone would have done the same." However, fans of the show knew otherwise. This was peak drama, the kind that held viewers captivated for decades. Finally, the fire at Il Giardino served as a spark for Deacon's ambition, rather than the end of it. The new restaurant thrived, becoming a popular destination for both Forrester family celebrations and Logan gatherings. Sheila made occasional appearances, always with her usual flair, but her presence felt less menacing and more integrated. One holiday season, when dazzling lights adorned the eatery, Deacon called Sheila aside. "You know, without you, none of this would exist. The rebuild, the fresh start, it all stems from that night." She smiled, her eyes glistening. "Then let's toast to flames that don't destroy, but illuminate." The glasses clinked once more, and the past's shadows faded. The bold and the beautiful's complicated web of relationships continues to weave, but the chapter ended on a note of hard-earned grace. Sheila had flown into the flames, emerging transformed rather than unscathed, a tribute to the persistent power of human connection in a world full of perpetual soap opera surprises. Flames raged through Il Giardino, engulfing everything in their path as smoke engulfed the once thriving restaurant. The crackling fire grew louder by the second, shooting sparks into the night sky as scared onlookers gathered outside, helplessly watching the horror unfold. Deacon Sharp was locked inside, dazed and trying to figure out how to get out as the heat increased around him. Every outlet appeared to be blocked, making it difficult to breathe. Deacon gasped violently and shielded his face from the oppressive smoke. The walls groaned beneath the pressure of the fire, making it brutally evident that time was running out. Just as optimism began to evaporate, a person appeared from the thick haze, Sheila Carter. Her eyes glowed with intent, mirroring the intensity of the fire itself. She moved forward without hesitation, ignoring the dangers that surrounding her. "Deacon," she yelled, her voice just breaking through the pandemonium. When she noticed him across the room, she dashed to his side, grabbing his arm as rubble crashed nearby. He looked at her in surprise, astounded that she would risk her life to save him. However, there was no time for queries. The flames rose, obstructing their route, but Sheila refused to give up. She rapidly examined the room, seeing a narrow entrance toward the back. She yanked Deacon along, guiding him through the disintegrating structure. The heat was intense, and the air was nearly impossible to breathe, yet Sheila persisted, her grip on Deacon never loosened. They dashed for the exit as the ceiling began to collapse. A beam crashed behind them, shooting sparks into the air. Sheila finally pushed Deacon through the threshold before staggering out herself. They dropped to the ground outdoors, gasping for oxygen as the flames raged behind them. As rescue personnel raced in, Deacon glanced at Sheila with a mix of surprise and thankfulness. She had put everything on the line to save him, including her life and future.
But why?
What motivated her to commit such a dangerous act? As the flames of Il Giardino continued to burn into the night, a question hung in the air. Is this the beginning of Sheila's redemption, or just another twist in her unpredictable game that would leave spectators stunned?